I am delighted to be joined by Mahir Sahin, founder and partner of Cloudberry Pioneer Investments today. Mahir, you and I first were connecting over some common companies that we are both pretty excited about in the compute space. And our initial conversations were wide spanning. And I thought that some of the insights that you shared would be selfish for me to keep to myself. So you humbly agreed to be a part of the podcast. So welcome.
Thank you. Like, I'm delighted to be here. I hope I can still remember the insights you're referring to.
Well, you know what? We'll start off pretty softball here because one of the things that really struck me was, and it's something that I found across founders in different organizations. Passionate people are passionate in all aspects of their life, and your passion for travel and sports might align with or equal your passion for investment in technology, and so. Can you tell me, is there a recent place that you visited that maybe is not underscored as often, but that you found quite compelling?
Oh, yeah, actually, it's a good question because my wife and I, we went to the Baltics in July. So we went to Estonia and Latvia. It's a part of the world that we didn't know much about, but was one of the few places you go and you're still being surprised and eye-opening. Just to give you an example, Riga, like the architecture of the buildings and how well some of these old buildings have survived the wars. It was fascinating. So that was very nice. And related to investments, there is a lot of young people. They all have learned how to code and so innovative. The governments are very digital. The infrastructure is very digital. With our smartphones, we were just able to get around without renting a car. Traveled from Estonia, started in Tallinn, had a stopover, took like the intercity buses and the seaside resort, and then from there to Riga, and from Riga back to London. So it was yeah, a brilliant trip.
Well, it sounds like fun. And before we picked up the recording, you were talking. I joked with you that every time we talk, I feel like we have to play "Where in the World is Carmen San Diego?" because you're jet setting somewhere, and you didn't surprise. You said that tomorrow morning you're leaving for Singapore, and in addition to doing some conferences, you're also going to Formula One, right?
Yeah, that's true. So I've been following Formula One since my childhood, the Michael Schumacher and Ayrton Senna days. When I was at Google in the Android team, Google still is sponsor of the McLaren team, and I was based in Singapore. I had the privilege to host our business partners, like VIP business partners at Formula One and at the McLaren garage. But now, as you know, like I'm not at Google anymore, but this time I was invited by another technology company and have the privilege to attend as a guest, so which I'm looking forward to.
Well, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of fun. Let's talk a little bit about your career trajectory before we go into Cloudberry, because you alluded to spending time at Google, and I think you were pretty humble because you had multiple leadership roles spanning the globe. Even advised at X, their Moonshot Factory. That decade and a half must have had some defining moments that have helped shape your thoughts on innovation and investment. Can you talk about those?
So, I mean, I've been in big tech. I'm saying often now for 20 years. The first 4 years were with Oracle, and the remaining 16 years they were with Google. But I would say I've experienced a lot of things during that time, and it was like you're in the middle of it, right? When you work for these companies with all the technological innovation and changes happening in society. I was, for example, very early on in the Android team when the platform was quite small. Um, and seeing it when I left the Android team, we had probably over 3 billion people in the world using Android smartphones. When you see a platform going from a couple of million people to over 3 billion, um, it's fascinating how we see like how people have used the technology, the devices, how it changed people's life. There has been a time where I managed the business or the partnerships business for Android for Africa. It was I think 2016 until 2019, and that was a time when the first affordable smartphones were hitting the market. So my team and I we were working with a lot of device manufacturers and the telecommunication operator together, like a three or four. Sometimes we also with the chipset manufacturer as well. You basically have four parties at the table, and we were discussing how can we bring the price down? How can we make the platform efficient on 512 MB RAM? What can we cut? What are the costs? What is the minimum viable product? And it was ruthless exercise we went through, but we managed to launch in almost like 20 plus African countries smartphones that cost less than $40. And that was a crucial price point to enable mass adoption because the price of the basic Nokia phones, the feature phones, were around $20. Our goal was actually to get there, but it was still impossible. And in hindsight, I feel like we've been lucky. We had also good uh, and supply chain wise good times because afterwards, like after 2018, 2019, suddenly display prices, battery prices, component prices, everything went up. I feel like now launching a $35 smartphone is probably more impossible than it was what is it like 9 years ago than it was 9 years ago, but it was crucial that this was done, and it contributed so much to change, like I mean I'm investing for example in fintech for example, and that was the for African fintech that was the birth, right? There was suddenly through SMS you could start making payments. We had moving to smartphones, the digital payments, better ID, better security, and now you have a booming fintech scene across the African continent.
Well, that seems to be a particular area of interest of yours. And having just a few years ago myself visited Africa, and that was a catalyst for me to really launch into a couple of the verticals that SBT's in.
Mhm.
Um, I'm curious, how has living in Asia and Africa and Europe and working across those informed or been instructive in your investment thinking?
Oh, a lot. And I think that, like my wife and I, we keep saying this all the time. The best education is traveling. Um, I mean, you learn a lot at school, etc. But when you travel, you like your horizon expands so much. You suddenly see a things from a different vantage point of view. And that was, I think, the biggest learnings I had when we lived in Singapore. So there was a time for me to get to learn much more about the Asian culture, how people do things, how people view things. Um, because I grew up in Germany, in Europe, so it's more like an individualistic. You're on your own, you compete, etc. But the community values, the family values, it's just so different in Asia, and I noticed that it informs so many things. It translates into product development, into how business is conducted, and I had to adapt very quickly. Most of my career I spent in roles where I had to do partnerships with other companies, so and it's all about people to people, making making arrangements that is beneficial for both sides. But the how to do it is really different country by country. And I notice also within the region, like Southeast Asia, where we live, I noticed like what a massive difference that you had between countries and within the country between segments um, and groups of people and cities versus village areas. So it was fascinating.
Well, absolutely, and it's something that I actually didn't know before this conversation, but we have another shared belief, and I've always said, and my wife and I have made the commitment that we'll sacrifice many things, but we won't sacrifice travel with our children because we believe that that actually expands people's capabilities of dreaming. When you see how big the world is, it really expands your abilities to dream too. So. Um, your time at Google X, how has that shaped your thinking from an investment standpoint and how you go about investing in technologies that aren't, 2 or 3 years out, but maybe a decade or two out?
Yeah, actually, I think that like my last stint with an Alphabet was with X, the Moonshot Factory, where the whole philosophy is about solving the world's hardest problems with with a very different and radically different approach. Um, and yeah, it sounds really interesting, but when I was there and there was a project that I supported, they had an amazing innovation. Um, but I also noticed like even if you have like the a great solution, it's just it doesn't mean it will just hit the market and will be a success overnight. So that were basically I think I learned a lot of things that even if you have great technology, that there is so much more to it to make it successful. And I think that helps me also to curb my enthusiasm when I see very exciting things, exciting technology, and have probably also a more honest conversation with the founders. Actually, okay, okay, this all is brilliant, right? 1,000 times more efficient, cheaper, or whatever. But how do we make this a reality? And let's really talk about the hurdles and how can I be a partner to you, not only an investor, but how can you utilize me being an operator for over 20 years, working globally, working with big tech, to help you overcome some barriers that even the big companies have been struggling to solve. And I've been involved in so many projects that we killed. So it's sometimes not only it, money cannot always solve all problems. Let's put it this way.
Well, sometimes it creates them. So,
Yeah.
um, tell me this. So, you left Google. What was the catalyst for forming Cloudberry? And I'm kind of a nerd about names. Tell me the
Yeah.
genesis of the naming.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. So I been an angel investor probably for almost a decade. So I like working with startups. I get energy from their energy, from the enthusiasm, etc. Um, and I've the last few years I've also invested together with friends, like that we joined up in a like a community deal. And one of my long-term friends, who has exited his a very successful serial entrepreneur, exited his ad tech company. He was one day he told me like, "Hey, Mahir, why don't you manage the budget I've put aside to invest in startups and do it professionally?" I was like, yeah, I would love to do it. I always thought about it, but I didn't know how to start. But if you are serious, so we shook hands, then I will quit my job because my wife and I, we've been planning to go back to London. And I can be more independent and work from wherever I want. We can continue traveling And that's how it all started. First, the idea of setting up the first investment vehicle, and the name, interestingly, my friend is Austrian, his wife is Swedish, and Cloudberry is a very delicious fruit, a berry that grows predominantly in the Nordics, like in Sweden, Finland, also Estonia, and she loves cloudberries. And then when I looked into the story of cloudberries, it was a no-brainer to pick the name because cloudberries are very rare. They're hiding in the forest. So, and I felt like, wow, really good startups, decacorns, etc. They're also rare, right? They're hiding out there. Um, and once you find them, you are rewarded because their cloudberries are very delicious. So, and once you find these hidden startups that have this amazing potential, you'll be rewarded financially.
I love it. As a foodie, I will
Yeah.
say another new for me. I had never heard of cloudberries before, and that's why I asked people about naming conventions. Typically, have a
Yeah.
just such a fun story. So
Yeah.
now you really invest in three bold areas: tokenization, decarbonization, and next generation computing. Um, is there a common theme within those that you've seen, or why are those the three areas that you put the flag in the ground as the areas that you want to invest in?
Yeah, initially, when I started with the thesis, I didn't see the common theme. This came with the time. Um, so in terms of scaling computers, something I experienced working in tech, the background 20 years, and you can it's like discovering electricity, right now everyone is using AI. Soon everyone will be using AI but not even be aware of using AI. It's like electricity, right? We are not thinking much about electricity. But I thought we have one of the, like, coming back to the experience from Google X, right? We probably have one of the hardest problem in the world right now is like the usage is exploding, but how are we going to support this growth, computing demand, without destroying the planet? So that's something I thought, okay, this is like a hardest problem, right? This is the growth, the computing growth is unstoppable. What we are witnessing right now is football fields of data centers that use massive energy and water resources being built, and they have to be built, just to satisfy the demand, the near-term demand. But it's not sustainable if we cannot uh, um, continue like this. That's why, and whenever you have the biggest, like, tough problems, I think the biggest innovation also come as well at that time. So I feel like it's a once in a 20 years opportunity to actually find companies that help us block by block solve these bigger problems. That's why I've picked that area, and that area is a good segue to the area of decarbonization. Decarbonization is all about obviously reducing carbon emissions, but also sustaining existing resources we have, right? Being like circularity is a big topic. Minerals are a geopolitical topic right now, as you know. So, and they are so crucial and essential. And we are relying on them, but do we really have to rely on them 10 years, 20 years down the line? Can material innovation help us to find replacement minerals, or and I mean, diamond industry is a great example, right? I mean, lab grown diamonds are very established today. And I don't know, majority of the Tiffany engagement rings are now made out of lab-grown diamonds. So you have less mining activities now because more of the diamonds are lab-grown. But I learned that lab-grown diamonds use a lot of energy. So again, they create a carbon emissions problem like data centers. And one of the portfolio companies that we invested, turns out they produce green hydrogen and they have very, very high green hydrogen that's very high uh, purity, and high pure hydrogen purity is apparently required for lab-grown diamond production. So you can so suddenly you can see like a common thread across all these topics. So for us, we felt like scaling compute, the foundational layer, uh, technological innovation can actually help us in each of the verticals that we are looking at.
So, when you're considering investing in a company, in particular, focusing in the computing realm, for example, is there something that you look for, that it factor, in a company?
Yeah, I mean, definitely I look for the it factor. It's it's hard to describe usually what it is. Sometimes it's the person. Sometimes it's uh, the like the vision of the person, the clarity of how they painted out the future, and and the conviction rate they have in their technology. That often I feel like that makes the difference between if I compare multiple companies that have similar solution or do similar things. It's usually the founder that gives it the edge. Um, and yeah, and I like founders that really have uh, very bold ideas. Like they come from completely some different angle where you're actually really surprised by the approach. And basically, I think that that can make the difference for me.
I love it. So really, clarity, conviction, and boldness are the three things that, recipes for getting you excited. On the flip side of that, are there red flags, things that you look for that, are likely to make a company uninvestable?
Yeah, I mean, red flags is, for example, if everything is brilliant, if everything is great, it's a red flag. Like we want integrity, honesty, we also want to hear, me specifically, what's not going well, for example, right? Because why are you here? Why do you need money if everything is great? Um, so it's if if everything is sugar coated, it's a red flag. If there is lack of awareness of competition, it's for me a red flag as well. Um, and because then you haven't done your homework as well, like you've been just in your own bubble the whole time. Obviously, I'm very people-focused person. I've been in managerial roles most of my career, and I know how important it is to have a strong team, to develop the people in your team, to be a good coach, good mentor. And if I have calls with founders or visit them in offices, and if I pick just some negative vibe, or if I feel like, oh, the way the founder just talked to this person that reports to him or her in a condescending way, that's something for me also a red flag. And yeah, and often I try to read between the lines as well, yeah, and be careful of certain things. Sometimes I don't like it if you're put under too much time pressure. It's like, hey, last opportunity, you have to come right in. I don't like if too many names are being dropped, those kind of things. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. You talked about the teams and how the founders interact with their teams. How important is technical talent assessment in your journey? And then how do you go about weighing that, the caliber of the technical talent?
Yeah, I mean, technical talent is obviously super important, right? It's if especially if you invest in deep tech, it's almost like a hygiene factor. Um, so obviously, most of the founders we talk to, they have amazing academic credentials. They have published papers or they have a PhD. So there is already a lot of things they have done in their life that gives myself like more confidence in their technical ability. So that's where I'll focus on also on the softer elements and skills because I want to find companies that can become really big, right? Are they able to manage hundreds of people or thousands of people, right? How would they cope with the highest level of stress? It's hard to judge these things, if you just had a few conversations or business conversations. Sometimes it's good if you get to know the person better, if you suddenly they tell you something about their childhood or stories or how they overcome adversity, like difficult situations in their life. Those can be good learnings and examples, that give you more confidence that if they hit crisis mode, that they'll be a bit more resilient than potentially other founders.
Very good. I really like that. I haven't heard that before. Many of the founders that I speak with and work with personally give a lot of credit to their investment partners and helping them to scale their companies. Beyond just providing capital, that's one of the things that really drew me to you as well. Is you actually seek out opportunities to be able to support the entrepreneurs. How do you go about that? What are some areas that maybe you are uniquely positioned to provide support that uh, other investment leaders might not be able to?
Yeah, one thing I learned is that it goes two ways. The founder also needs to be willing to to seek advice and open to advice and support. So if I know I can help through experience, through the global exposure that I had, through the business connections that I made throughout my business careers. But if the founder doesn't have like willingness in terms of make most use of that, then it would be also a bit wasted. Um, but yes, I like being active, being operating and suggesting ideas. I'm often when I talk with someone from my network, they do something where I feel like, oh, this is super relevant to the company portfolio company I have. I would immediately make a connection, bring people together, and and I think that's usually appreciated a lot. Like even let's say there is a financing round that the founder or the startup is planning. I would probably what I do is I would really screen my LinkedIn and look at who would be good co-investors for us to participate in the next round, and I'll just message them all because I'll there's a bit of extra work, but I'm happy to do it, and I think it's more credible me as a fellow investor reaching out and raising awareness for the startups and the founder emailing or reaching out to investors, because I think a lot of investors they don't see it as a good sign if they are approached cold on LinkedIn, etc. So I would strategize and see like how what's the best way to do it. And I'm also very honest. Like if there's a group of investors or a group of advisors, I would say let's make a list of target people, target companies, and let's decide among all of us who is the best person to, because I may be the best person for certain type of outreaches in certain locations, but I'm sure there are some other people that we have in this circle that can be better positioned, and let's use their help as well.
I really like that. And one of the things that we look for in companies that we partner with is that they're ecosystem builders. A rising tide lifts all boats. And that seems to be the same philosophy here. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs on the other side that are preparing to raise their institutional round, both
Mhm.
in pitching, but also if they've got something really good, they're likely to be in selection mode in selecting the right partner for them?
So first advice I would give them is, I don't know if it's a good advice or not. I know a lot of people, founders do it like spray and pray. I would say don't waste your time. Don't dilute your value. Be very thoughtful who you approach and how you approach them. As you know, almost every venture capital company has an investment thesis, has areas they focus on. I mean, the first exercise they need to do, what they're doing, does it fit with the investor's investment thesis or area they are looking? Are they at the right stage? If not, don't waste your time. Like, use your energy. Let's say you have a target of thousands investors, rather than just emailing blindly 1,000, do a bit of research and identify the 50 that makes just most sense from what they say, what you've read about them, and what other companies they have invested in. And when you do your outreach, reference that. Like, we've seen you've invested in this company. By the way, you would probably also be interested to hear what we are doing. Customize that outreach accordingly. And then to coming back to what I said earlier, if there is another person who can actually sponsor that outreach, is if it's like an existing investor or an existing advisor that may be better connected, let others talk for you, right? Like, for example, for I'm doing fundraising, and it turns out that the best fundraiser is actually my anchor LP. So so everyone he talks to is wants to invest, but if I would go to someone and say, "Hey, I'm raising funds," then how can I differentiate myself with from 1,000 other VCs who are fundraising as well? Like, it's good to let others actually speak for you.
Very good. And the second part of that, how do you advise them to screen out or to select the right partner?
Okay, what you mean once they are in discussions with multiple and they have to choose either this one or that one? Yeah, okay. That's a great problem to have, right? I think if founders are in a situation, are in a round where it's becoming competitive between the investors, and they can choose the investor. I know a lot of founders, they go by name, like the more famous the VC, the more likely they are to pick them. But I've heard from so many founders or portfolio companies that these VCs sometimes are also too big. They actually can't give them the support, the relationship, the dedication, that they're expecting. So there is a mismatch between expectation and what they actually get in return. So if the founder is, let's say, has a direct relationship with the general partner of that venture capital, it's not only an analyst or investment manager, but the general partner or someone senior in the fund, and feels like valued and feels you always feel the level of engagement of other people, right? You feel if this person is just after a transactional deal or if this person is really does really care and is wants to do a partnership with you. I think it would be important to listen to your gut feeling there rather than just to go by the by the surface of things, like by names, numbers, etc.
As we wind down our time here, you have we referenced before. You've not only lived in but led businesses across the EU, Africa, Asia. The common theme, no matter where you are geographically, no matter what your culture is to be successful requires having the right people. What advice would you give to a company, a founder, when they're getting ready to scale their company?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, people are crucial to scale, and I assume that a lot of these companies have global ambitions. Like, first of all, diversity in your team is crucial. Diversity of thought is crucial. Uh, uh, if if they can have coverage, global coverage, like if they have someone who has knows the Asian markets really well, if they have someone who knows the European markets very well, so it's super important. Uh, I know a lot of companies are sometimes are just built out of Silicon Valley. The entire team is from Silicon Valley. Uh, the company may be super successful for the American context, but then once they want to scale globally, they can hit massive roadblocks. I've witnessed that working in a global company. That one great example is payments and QR codes. I don't know if QR codes are used much in, for example, in the US, but in Southeast Asia, wherever you went, whatever shop you went, you could just scan everything and pay through scanning QR codes. You want to set something up, you scan a QR code. So everything is like QR code based, and like making sure you have these type of features, built in will be crucial.
Last question here. So, you strike me as somebody who, beyond just using capital as the measure of success, you want Cloudberry to have a bigger impact on the world than just being super successful financially. If you could see the future 5 years from now or 10 years from now, what impact do you hope that Cloudberry as an investment vehicle has on the globe?
Yeah. So where we invest, like we invest in scaling compute, as I mentioned, like if decarbonization and tokenizing finance is the third area. Like if there's a company in 5 to 10 years that is changing any of those three areas, so I would, and we have played a role in finding the founder, supporting them along the way. That's how actually success would look like. Like just if you look at today, if you look at the NVIDIA's, ASML's, and other companies of today, uh, and I firmly believe that we will actually find at least one company that is going to have a, a massive impact on make the world a better place in one of those three areas. Um, and that's how I envision where we will be in, and we will speak proudly about the journey, etc.
The last thing that I'll say is it's really on behalf of Cloudberry. You guys have an incredibly well known name and well respected name in Europe, and you're expanding your presence here in the US. What message would you give to a founder of a company here in the US that maybe hadn't heard of Cloudberry, that would make them want to consider you?
Yeah, actually, that you reminded me about something that I should have said earlier as well when you asked me about founders selecting investors, and I talked about diversity of team and thought. One thing that I usually also emphasize is have a diversity of investors as well. Have Make sure that not all your investors come from one town. So if you're a US company and most US companies they think global, and that's why a lot of them are so successful, and a lot of Europeans are in awe of US companies. Is make sure you get a few European, a few Asian investors also on board, because when you're ready to scale globally, they'll be the first to help you. They'll open doors for you. They'll be your biggest ally, biggest supporter, and that's my vision as well for Cloudberry, that we are actually able to bridge the Atlantic Oceans, the Pacific. It's not only North Americas, Europe, but also Europe, Asia, Asia, Americas, and Africa. That's where we would love to help. And actually, one of my portfolio companies is out of Australia, and they have a few European investors, and I brought the European investors together and the startup to have a meeting and offer like how can we help you better with your European business, etc. Yeah.
Well, the last thing, if a founder wanted to get a hold of you, how would you ask them to do that?
I respond to my LinkedIn messages, so LinkedIn is an easy way to reach me. And yeah, I think that's the best way. Yeah.
Well, I never like ending it with a goodbye because I only speak with people on the podcast that I consider friends, and so what I'll say is until next time. I really appreciate the time, as does our audience.
Thank you so much for having me, Justin. And it's also a pleasure working with you, and you've been also a great supporter of the fund. So thank you very much.